Hey everyone, welcome to Sunny Commutes, a podcast where I combine the worlds of web development and business and share my experiences. This is podcast episode 75, and I'm getting back into this with a story that I haven't shared with anyone yet, and that is how I worked on a project for a client for 3 full months and didn't get paid a single dollar for it. So a bit of background on this first. I actually got into web development when I was 13 because I was really interested in computers as a young kid. I got a computer around that time, and I was really more specifically interested in how websites are built. And so one day I just Googled, and specifically I Yahoo'd at the time, but I looked up how to build a website, and I clicked on the first result. Took me to like this static site builder, so it didn't actually use any code. It did allow for it, and that was kind of my foray into learning code. But that is how I built my first site, and that is how I got interested in web development. Now, I did later decide to turn my hobby into a career. I went to UNC Charlotte and majored in computer science. During that time, I still did a lot of side projects. It was still like something that I enjoyed to do. And so I had a couple of friends that I built projects with together, including doing an agency so that we could do client work for other people. It was mostly a lot of client projects that were for other friends. And so it really wasn't anything big, and it wasn't a huge amount of money either. It wasn't like big client projects. But at one point, I believe this was during my sophomore year in college, during my second year, there was another agency, like a quote-unquote real agency, that reached out to us, and they were interested in partnering up. They wanted to share projects together, share clients specifically. And so they asked us if we were interested in doing one project for them. Very small, would take about a couple of days and would not pay a whole lot. But if we did really good on that first project, then they would give us much bigger projects from bigger clients. And keep in mind this during college, we didn't have like big time jobs or anything yet. And we weren't really making a lot of money from our own businesses that we're running. So we decided, yeah, this might be something good. These people seem fairly trustworthy. So we decided to go for it, and we did that first project. Now, that first one actually did not take long at all. It took me about a day, and it got us about $100. So for us at the time, decent money for a days of work. And that allowed us to get that bigger project that the agency initially reached out to us about. And I'm like, cool, okay, so, this might lead to something bigger in the future where I might actually be able to do this as a full-time thing. And that really was motivating me at the time. I was also very naive at the time too, because, I didn't do this sort of thing before, right? I did not do big projects. I did not do big, deal with big clients. I didn't really consider like fraud to be a thing, or that people would, I'd get into the situation where I wouldn't get paid for the work that I do. But you can already see where this is going. We decided to take on this project, and we did not, we signed an NDA, but there was no really contract about when we'd get paid and when, what's the deadline and all those things. And so we started getting into it. We started coding. Took us about 3 months, like I said, and there was a couple red flags throughout this whole process, because in terms of communication, they weren't really that good at it. The main developer, there was like one guy that was kind of running the operation, and he was not a developer, so it was hard to communicate with him in terms of the actual project implementation. So you had another guy that was a developer that I could interact with in terms of getting some help, because we're using frameworks and code that I was not familiar with. But in terms of what we're actually building, it was a travel resort website. It was also a mobile app. So not only was I building a full stack website, required an API, required a front end app. It was built with Laravel, PHP, and Angular. And haven't dealt with Angular before, so I was like learning that new. But I was familiar with Laravel, and a mobile app, and I was using Ionic for that. And so I, 3 months, mobile app, full stack website, had search built in, a bunch of crazy features, geolocation, and dealing with like that main developer that I was interacting with almost every couple of days, just to get updates and ask questions. It wasn't really there was still like some questions that I had in terms of what we're actually building. The scope kept changing a lot. That was another red flag. And time came when I'm like, okay, I'm done. After a couple of meetings with them, I figured out what they want. So I thought what I got was a good idea of what they wanted. But then came time for, okay, here's the deadline, here's the full project, here's like a demo of it. What do you think? And they tell me that this is not what they asked for. This is not the scope of the project that they were hoping for. It was not, it was very far from what they wanted. And I'm like, no, we've had multiple discussions about this. Why are you telling me that this is, like, why are you telling me this now after the project is finished? And they're like, well, they didn't care that they may have potentially miscommunicated or didn't make it clear that what they actually wanted in terms of features, or what's the business logic that they wanted in the app. And so they came back to me and like, no, this is exactly what I want. And I'm like, okay, that's not what you told me initially, but if we misunderstood, okay, that's on us. We'll go ahead and redo those aspects. Let me look into see how difficult it is. So we got a few extra weeks extended, and I negotiated in terms of the payment and everything, and I pulled a couple of all-nighters, and I got it done. I got, with the new scope, the new features, exactly what they wanted. I got it done, and I gave it to them, and they're like, okay, cool, let's show this to the client, and let's see what they think. And then they come back to me again, and they say, well, actually, no, they did not even come back to us initially. We actually had to reach out back to them because, again, we did not get paid during this time. So I had to reach out to them, and I'm like, hey, so did you hear from the client? Like, what's going on, and what's our expectations on getting paid? Are we going to get paid with a negotiated amount that we agreed upon? And when the client got back to them, they apparently told them that they did not like the site. They did not, they wanted something else. And so again, it's like, scope changes. It's telling them that's not what they wanted. Tried to talk to them multiple times. I'm like, look, we did the work for you. This is what you asked for. I even went ahead and worked extra. I admitted fault and I said, hey, okay, we'll rebuild some of these parts to do exactly what you wanted. And even after all of that, after working over 3 months on this project, we're like, hey, we're going to get paid for this, right? We did the work. We're going to get paid. It doesn't matter if the client likes the project or not. That's between you and the client. That's not the way that they saw it. They're like, if we're not getting paid for it by the client, then we're not going to pay you. So what ended up happening, and this is after multiple discussions, and I even tried negotiating down, like, will you pay as little as $1,000 for this? But they decided, yeah, we're just going to ignore you and not going to pay you a single dollar for this project. I would have loved to pursue it legally, but the thing is, we did not have a contract. So there's a couple of lessons from this, right? The first one is request money up front. Don't take on work where you might risk not getting paid at all for it. So that's the first thing, like take at least half. That is actually a common number that I see. Take at least half because you should know what you're worth. You should have that credibility that you're going to deliver on the work. Whereas with clients, you have no idea if they're going to pay you or not, right? And the second thing, if this sort of thing does happen to you, well, you need to have some sort of contract saying, on paper that you agreed to deliver this scope of work on this date, and it'll get paid for this amount. And that's it. If either party doesn't deliver on that, then you can take it to court or, go through legal troubles. Usually it doesn't go that far. Usually it's like, yeah, we have a contract. We don't want any issues. So if we had a contract, if we had it all done the right way, probably would have gotten paid. But it was a really big lesson. And the other way that I do look at it is that it's not like I got nothing from it, because I did learn a lot of things about full stack development. I learned how to build a mobile app. I worked with technologies that I was not familiar with. And it was during college, so I wasn't really like losing out on money that I could have made. However, I do still wish that I didn't have to learn the hard way. Hopefully you don't go through that yourself. I hope that was an interesting story. I definitely did not enjoy going through it in terms of the experience, but I hope it was interesting to at least hear from how someone might be going through something very similar. I have a friend that has told me that he also has done client work and not gotten paid for it. So yeah, definitely not fun, but hopefully makes for an interesting story. I got a couple of other stories I'd love to tell, but that's for another episode. Reach out to me on Twitter at SunnySyncIO. Also on my website, you can find a form that you can send me a message through, or other social media, sunnysync.io. I have all the links in the show notes for this, and I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thanks for listening. Peace.